Good night, everyone. Today
Hi, good.
will be, alright, today we'll be learning about learning network theory. Our presenters are Jerome Bloomfield, myself, and Tanisha Box. So the objectives of this is to go beyond the idea of training courses and explore the relationship between work and learning through the interaction of different actors, employees, managers, HR professionals, training institutions. The article critique both the functionalist management approach, see learning as a top-down management tool, and the context-independent view, which ignores workplace relatives. Realities, sorry. Now to summarize it a little bit more. So the article is Learning Network Theory, organizing the dynamic relationship between learning and work. The article introduced learning network theory as a descriptive framework that explains how learning is organized with organizations. The authors are the authors argued against the traditional view of learning as a functionalist tool controlled solely by management in controlled solely by management. Instead, they propose that learning emerges from a network of actors, which are employees, managers, and HR department, bringing their own personal beliefs and strategies to the table. So some main points. Approaching to learning, the different approach to learning by management in the traditional way was seen as a means of control over employees. However, the learning theory rejects the concept that management use learning as a tool to control its employees. Contribution of participants. The study shows that learning is a active event that is repeated amongst managers, employees, and training agents, which each participant taking their own strategies and theories to the table. Learning network dynamics. The format of a learning network depends on two main areas, the goal and influence of those involved in making the presentation and the specific requirements and the nature of each task being performed. Types of learning projects. The theory outline ways in which the learning networks evolve, such as liberal learning networks, the vertical learning network, the horizontal learning network, and the external learning network. Current issues in work and related learning. The article identifies several critical shifts and challenges in how organizations approach learning. The survival mandate, which is learning is increasingly viewed as essential for organization survival due to rapid technology changes and the need for innovation. Criticism of current models. Existing approaches are criticized for being too narrow, often disregarding employees as co-organizers of their own learning and focusing only on a learning elite. Employee empowerment. Work structures have shifted from rigid, tailorless the divisions to semi-autonomous teams. where employees bear responsibilities previously held by management. Individual responsibility. Employees are now expected to be responsible for their own learning and employability to remain flexible in an environment of change, contracts, and work tasks. Vocationalization of learning. This is a growing trend of vocationalizing learning that was once independent of the labor market, with adult education focusing more on specific work qualification than general purpose growth, personal growth. Actor dynamics in learning networks. Unlike traditional models where training is something done to an employee by an HR department, learning network theory poise the learning poise that learning is a social construction. Diverse perspectives. Every actor, employee, middle management, external consultants has their own theory on how work should be done and how learning should happen. Negotiation. The actual learning network that emerges in an office or factory is a result of these different groups interacting, sometimes collaborating and sometimes clashing over priorities. Self-organization. Because employees are now more empowered, they often organize their own informal learning path. Example, asking a colleague for help, which can be more effective than a formal seminar. The authors contrast their theory against two main rival perspectives: the functionalist approach and the context-independent approach. So the functionalist approach, the view learning is a tool for management to achieve specific organizational goals. The flaw, it treats employees as passive recipients of knowledge and ignores the fact that people often learn things that aren't in the official manual but are essential for the job. Context, the context independent approach. The view of this approach is that there is a best way for an organization to learn that applies to any company, regardless of the industry. The flaw to this approach, it ignores the specific work characteristics of a job. A software a software dev team leans definitely that a hospital surgical ward. The theory argues you cannot separate the way people learn from the type of work they do. Okay. Evolving methods of organizing learning. Organizations are increasingly moving away from off-the-job training in favor of diverse integrated methods. On-the-job training nowadays learning is delivered within the workplace to replace costs and prevent training transfer problems, where skills learned elsewhere don't apply to the actual job. Integrated work learning. Method like action learning, job coaching, and mentoring are gaming acceptance. Excuse me. Organizational redesign. Instruments such as job rotation, job enlargement, and job enhancements are used to improve the quality of work life while encouraging employees' flexibility. The technical and physical space organization have developed learning islands, physical group learning space, change laboratories for incremental improvements, and open learning centers using multimedia for self-paced training. Now, from all of that, let's see if we can properly give a definition here. So, the learning network theory is a descriptive theory that analyzes how organizational learning is created through the interactions of employees, managers, and professionals who develop alternative ways to shape learning in relation to work process. This was taken from Powell et al. 2000. The evolution of learning network theory. 1990. This is from the 1990s, organizational learning networks. Developed by scholars like Van der Graaf, this theory analyzes the tension between two key aspects of organization: humanity, developing potential, and work relevance, improving work process. It treats organization as network of actors, employees, managers, trainers, who shape learning through interaction, rejecting a one-size-fits-all training approach. Late 1990s to 2000, bridging theory and practices. Focus on the dual orientation of learning, where systems must satisfy both organizational work needs and individual human potential. It shifts from static training methods to active, negotiated learning networks. Now, the early 2000s to present, the network learning era and connectivity, the digital age, also known as the digital age. Heavily influenced by the internet and social media, this phase focused on connecting, searching, and managing knowledge rather than just receiving it. As proposed by George Siemens, learning evolved to include non-human technological nodes. This network learning highlights that knowledge exists within networks, requiring individuals to form connections with technology and diverse sources. Modern shift from structure to process. The focus has shifted from pre-defined top-down training programs to decentralized peer-driven networks. Focus on the networked learning of employees, emphasizing the active role individuals take in constructing their learning. Evolutionary drivers. Internal organizational needs, the need to balance professional growth with operational efficiency. Technology advancements, the rise of internet, social media, and digital connectivity. Social and economic change, the shift towards knowledge-based economies where continuous learning through connection is vital. I believe this is where...
Hi guys. All right, so based on what Jerome just said, right? Can anybody identify one way in which you learn in an organization? Somebody. What's the best way, or what is your way of learning in your organization?
On the job training.
On the job training. Okay. Anyone else?
I was gonna say hands-on.
Hands-on.
Yeah, something
Okay.
hands-on.
Okay. So you prefer, are you the type that would watch and see when, like shadowing? You like to
Right.
see
Yes.
what's happening. Okay. So
Yeah.
basically, and thank you, Andre and Toby. So basically, what the learning network theory, or the LNT for short, um, what they did in response to the criticism that Jerome mentioned, they propose an interpretive framework. So this includes acknowledging that employees are central actors who organize learning based on their own interests. I can say you're going to want to learn, or you're more interested in learning something that benefits you, right? Because you're not going to learn accounts that you don't like account, unless it is that your job really, really you need to know the basic. But you're not going to go in depth to learn accounts or medicine if that's not something that is beneficial to you long term. It also views learning not just as a didactic tool, but as an expression of various organizing strategies used by diverse actors. It also recognizing the imminent tension between employees' development and actual work performance. And we're going to talk a bit more about the tensions in a bit. All right, so on this chart, or what you're actually seeing is a cycle where the actors with action theory influence learning processes. So the policies, the programs, the execution, how that happens, each actor has a role to play. You know, like when you're watching a movie and you see that person playing a bad role, or that person playing a lover girl or lover boy role, in your workplace, everyone is an actor. Everyone has a role to play. And that in turn shapes the learning structure. So the climate, the content, and the organizational structure. Now, what is the applicability of the LNT evolution today? So based on what Jerome had said earlier, in our now society, we have remote work, hybrid. You work some days in office, some days you work from home, and in some jobs you work directly remote. And for those learning, the LNT enables decentralized digital communities to practice where knowledge sharing occurs organically through collaboration. So not because you're not physically at the location doesn't mean that you can't share knowledge. For me, I work hybrid, and we do stay on the line with computer. Of course, we can share screens, so I can show my team members, or they can show me what they're doing. We also have, the rapid upskilling and AI. As technology changes and is changing, work is also change. And it's getting faster and faster. Where traditional training, you don't have to, sit in a classroom every day. You can actually be trained on the computer, through LinkedIn, through degree, through, and the trainings can also be done. Instead of me coming to you, you can just log onto your computer and do the training that way. And AI is also a good space to learn. The knowledge management, the learning network theory helps companies move beyond static knowledge based on active networks, where employees share experience-based insights. So if Toby doesn't understand something, but she have the job to do, she can always, reach out to John, and John can help her because they're in the same network there, and stuff like that. All right. So we're gonna go to the components of a learning network. And as I said earlier, we have actors. So we have the learning actors. And these include internal stakeholders. So the employees, managers, and the training staff. And we also have externals. And the externals would be the professional associations, the unions, the consultants, and they act based on their own action theory. The norms and ideas that guide their choices. So why is it that you want to do this training? Why is it that we need to do this training? Stuff, questions like that. Employees are considered central learning actors because basically the training is for the employees. So they're the central point of it. The learning process. Actors interact to develop learning policies, determining what should be learned, creating learning programs. Basically, it's organizing a set of activities and executing. So yeah, you develop, the policies, you create the learning programs, and then you execute. Then we have the structure, the learning structure. These are stable patterns that merge over time, including the content structure. So what is the nature of the activity? Organizational structure. What is your role and your responsibility? So if it's a department manager, what is your role? If it's HR, what is your role? And then you have the learning climate. Who wants to learn? Is it a learning organization or everybody is, doing their own thing? All right. Toby, I'm going to ask you to help me to read this slide, please.
All right. So this is the 4 theoretical types of learning networks. The first one, vertical learning network, hierarchical relationship from management to employees. You have the top-down implementation of training, and the material is based on specific tasks or organizational goals, where you use training policies set by experts and delivered by line managers. The next one is the horizontal learning network, where it involves learning through conversations with peers. It connects with teams for practical application, where the leader acts as a facilitator rather than a boss, where it is often used to add new skills to current topics.
All right, thank you very much. All right, can someone tell me what they understand from what Toby just read? Anyone? No one?
All right. So these two, you have the vertical. So this would come basically from the management. So from your manager, supervisor, and it goes down to the lowest rank. That's where the information would flow. And then horizontal would be just lateral. So it would be department to department or one person to the next at the same level.
All right, awesome. So training can be done on the flats from me to you. We're on the same level. I can show you something that I just found out because every day is a new day. Every day is a new learning day. So we're going to always figure new ways to improve and get things done. And then you have the vertical, of course, as it says, top-down management decides, and you have to do it. Like in some organizations, you have training that is mandatory for compliance. It's something that you have to do, and it comes from
I just wanted to add like an example. So from hospitality, when the hotels, especially those who are outside or reside outside of the country, when you have, say, a base in Spain or Mexico, that's the base, that's the main hotel site, and everybody else is the chain. Them just have different ones around the place. That the main standards, the main way how you do things, the procedures, it comes from that head place, and then they pass down those standards to all the other chains and all the other locations. So I'm thinking the vertical learning network is something like that it comes from somewhere and it gets passed down to everybody else, while the horizontal thing is where we're learning from each other.
Yes. Yes, you are correct. So as you said, Tobia, the vertical is coming from the head office, and everybody just have to do it. Whether you're a manager, supervisor,
Yes.
in some cases, even the groundsman have to do it because it's compliance training. So and then the vertical is me learning from you because you figure out a new way to do Excel and you're going to show me how to do it.
Right, yes.
All right. And then, of course, we have 4 theoretical types of learning. Well, it's continuing. We have the external learning. We learn from outside. We learn, professional organizations and stuff. We are learning it from outside. So it connects employees with external professionals with learning provided in a methodological and professional manner, adapts to the requirements of the profession, and uses external expertise to solve complex problems. It's prevalent. It is prevalent in professional organizations where employees have strong ties to their profession and field. So, like in the banking, you'd find a lot of external people, coming in to do training. Even in the hotel industry as well, you do have external persons coming in to do training to make sure that, first aid is a training that is done in the hotel. Customer service is something that is done externally. And then we move on to liberal learning network. And this emerges when organizational strongly supports employees' empowerment. So when your organization believes or they have a learning culture, we discussed that somewhere else, where the organizations are learning, they're big on learning, and when that happens, it's a liberal learning. So they'll send you on outside courses. Like for my organization, I am doing this because my organization decides that they want us to learn. So we're going to look at the relationship between learning and labor networks. Now, the LTN posits that actors operate simultaneously in a learning network and a labor network. So, and that's where work is organized. Just as there are 4 learning networks, there are 4 corresponding types of labor networks. So for the labor networks, we have the entrepreneurial, the machine bureaucratic, the autocratic group, and the professional. Now, if you don't know, let me tell you. The autocratic refers to an organizational structure or management philosophy that prioritizes flexible innovation and decentralized decision making over rigid bureaucratic rules. So then flexible, right? All right. So this is where we talk about the tension. As I said earlier, we will talk a little bit more about tensions. So there is a high likelihood of specific pairing between these networks. So the vertical learning network is expected within a machine bureaucratic work environment. However, tensions exist because actors in the networks often pursue different objectives. So if you leave it up to me, I'm going to do what you want for them. But if you balance it, then I can do what needs to be done and what I want to do. So employees prioritize solving immediate work problems and their own professional development or job security, while managers focus on meeting organizational targets and team performance. So we know management, they have on blinkers, right? And they just focus on what they need to focus on. In most cases, then there's a mutual change. So actors use learning networks to change work policies and vice versa. So and an example is managers introduce new work methods, often use training programs to enable that change. So the managers are supposed to be on top of things, right? They're supposed to know what is happening and in the industry. And by that, for changes or policies that are coming, they get those done through training. So they train you first, or they should train you first in order to get you to start implementing those changes. Okay, so what are the key aspects of learning network in the modern HRD? So there's a shift from formal training to continuous learning. So again, you don't just learn once a year because you need to do your appraisals or you realize something is wrong. The learning network theory moves beyond organizing formal training courses to create environments where learning occurs through experience, peer interaction, and on-the-job training. So Teresa is now doing her degree or master's, sorry, and she learned something. She can always go back to her team and say, this is what I've learned. This is what we can implement and stuff like that. Employee-driven development. When you're empowered to take on your own training, you actually self-actualization comes into play. And of course, you're more motivated to get the job done because you're learning more. So it empowers employees to take ownership of their learning. So again, as I said before, it's not something that the boss just tell you or your manager just tell you have to do that training. They give you the platform or they give you the recommendations and you choose what you want to do. Right? All right. Then we have managing tensions. The LTN provides a framework to address the inherent tensions between personal growth, which is humanity, and the organization's need for efficiency, which is work relevance, helping align HRD activities with strategic goals. And we also have dynamic network oriented. The modern application involves using technology for social learning, collaborative platforms, and internal learning networks to share implied knowledge, moving away from the complementing hierarchical rigid training structure. So I have a question, and I'm going to throw this question to, let's see. I've not heard from Lovell. So Lovell, if management was supposed to allow employees to co-organize their own training, do you think employees would focus on their own interests instead of what the company needs? So based on what I've said before, what do you think?
Good night, everyone. All right. For me, the learning network theory, it really acknowledges this tension. However, the theory argues that employees are often the first to identify the work-related issues or the hurdles that they may face on a job basis that the management may not see or observe, right? However, but by allowing a liberal or a horizontal network to exist, we would have to tap into action theories, right? And that is where that solve the real-time problems. So basically, the goal is to negotiate a middle ground where personal growth and organizational targets overlap.
Okay. Everybody understood what Lovell said? All right. So basically, there has to be a mix. We have to know what the organization wants, what the employee wants, and we merge them so that everybody can be fulfilled, so to speak. Thank you very much, Lovell. All right. So for the L&T, there were some strengths that were identified in the article. It's actor-centric. So unlike many theories that treat employees as passive recipients of training, the L&T recognizes employees as active organizers. So again, employees, we're the ones that are on the ground. We're intimate with the processes. We're the ones that are using it. So we know what needs to be fixed and we can send it up to management. And then management, see what the issues are. In some cases, they'll organize training and send it back down to the employees. Context sensitive. It acknowledges that different departments within the same company might have completely different learning timings. So accounts, customer service, sales, security, whatever the department is, they may have different learning timings. And bridging the theory and practice. So it provides a practical tool, the 4 ideal types for HR to diagnose why training programs might be failing. So why is it that I'm not getting a result? I'm going to spend $1 million on this training. So that's what HR does after the training. And sometimes during. So an example, they try using a vertical approach in a liberal professional culture. Okay, so we have the main challenges. In everything in life have challenges, right? So even during this article, challenges were seen. Of course, data collection and privacy concerns, which is gathering accurate, up-to-date data on social interactions, such as emails, meetings, collaboration. If depending on your organization, I can just call you and say, hey, come show me this now, and we get it done. So there may not be any records of these things. It raises privacy issues as well, as monitoring employees' network can make staff feel watched, creating ethical dilemmas. Why are you going through my email? And then there's the unconscious learning and formalization. Learning network theory, or the L&T, emphasizes that learning often happens informally during everyday work, which is inherently hard to track, systemized, or formalized without destroying its spontaneous nature. And resistance to role changes, HR professionals must transform from being administrative staff to network managers, which causes resistance within traditional organizations, traditional organizational cultures that prefer strict hierarchies. All right, so, all right, I'm going to ask, Kimberly, are you here?
Yes, I am here.
All right, I have a question for you before we go to the, hold on. All right, so before we go, I would like to ask, right? So we are, isn't a vertical network the only safe option for a finance or healthcare industry because it's highly regulated? What do you think?
All right, so I think in order for compliance and safety, vertical, which would be a management-led network, is essential. However, the L&T suggests that even in rigid machine bureaucracies, a horizontal layer, which would be the peer-to-peer sharing, helps employees to handle the the complexity that manuals don't cover. So you can have a vertical policy with horizontal execution.
Okay, all right, thank you. Everybody understood what she was saying? Okay, all right, I take that silence as consent. All right, I have another question. So based on what Jerome and I just discussed, right? Do you think that this theory means that the HR department will become obsolete? I throw in that one out so anyone can answer.
I don't think so. Because even how Kimberly explained it, it could be something that, HR drives that, this needs to happen. Say we need to focus on this. It could definitely come from that standpoint. But how you get there, it could really be, say, up to the individuals. We want to focus on raising our customer service standards, for example. That's what HR sends out. How you get there as a team may just depend on you. It could very well be that in every single quarterly meeting, different supervisors focus on different aspects of customer service, or it could very well be that HR sends out training that is coming from, say, head office, or it could be that individuals seek out their own opportunities to be more aware or be more informed as it relates to customer service. But it does not mean that HR becomes obsolete, because, hey, what if it's a situation where the person wants to maybe do a bachelor's or an associate's degree in customer service administration, for example? It could very well be that HR now puts the funding in place for that. So, not obsolete.
What Toby just said?
I do not see HR becoming obsolete. What I see happening perhaps is a shift in the role, because there has to be some...
Sorry, you're breaking
Yes,
up.
yes.
Missing some of what you're saying. You're
I am
breaking up. Right.
Oh dear.
Try again, Tamika.
I am saying HR, I do not think HR will become obsolete, because I believe as time progresses and the environment changes, HR's role should also change to reflect the external environment. So also there is some sort of intentionality behind what we would have learned this evening. These theories do not manifest out of thin air. There has to be somebody there deliberately putting the groundwork and that sort of thing in place for the organization to benefit from these various theories, and L&T is one of them. So I do not agree. I wouldn't say that HR is becoming obsolete, just a change in the duties that they perform.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Yes. So HR is going to be the middle person in regards to, training. When, as Toby said, they'd be the ones to organize the funding for the training, and stuff like that. So, so let us conclude. The study concludes that LTN is a descriptive and interpretive model rather than just a best practice prescription. It provides a tool for understanding the inherent tension between employee development and work performance. So by focusing on strategies of various actors, it offers an alternative to rival management-driven perspective than often view learning as a simple tool of organizational control. So the workplace not controlling you and controlling your learning, they also gives you the upper hand in terms of what trainings you can do or you should do. All right, I'm gonna skip that one. because we basically had asked that question before. All right, so do you have any other questions for us?
No? Just to kind of say, just in this particular presentation, I realized that the open learning network, meaning how persons access content distance, in terms of online and such like that, it would have stemmed from this.
Okay.
So yeah, I realized that today.
Okay, awesome. And can you pinpoint any, like in your organization, right? Based on what we just discussed, can you see what they're doing in terms of training based on this?
Oh yes. I realize that it is something that is interconnected, and I can even see some of those coming out, the types of networks coming out in my organization, especially as it relates to the vertical and horizontal.
Okay.
And so I'm seeing them all. Yeah.
Okay. That's how I felt when I was reading it. I was like, hold on. But my company did this, or this company that I used to work with, nobody used to do this. So no, as we started, there were issues before, and this theory was actually I wouldn't say a fix, but it was something to be used, to be considered in regards to those issues.
True.
Any other questions or feedback? Anyone found anything that we discussed that they are seeing in their organization or somewhere that they used to work? No? Andre? Teresa? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us tonight. Doc, over to you.
All right. Many thanks, Tanisha and Mr. Bloomfield for this presentation, for taking us through. I'd like you to go back on the slides for me, please. Don't log off just yet.
Hold on.
Yeah.
From beginning? Hold on. Okay, what did I do? Did I share? All right, 1 second. Let me start sharing again. Which side do you want to see that?
All right. Go start from the front. Let me put it in slideshow mode so I can see. Go. No, go. Oh, I suppose it's taking a little, right.
You want me to continue? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. It was in your part of the presentation.
My part of the presentation?
Yes. All right. Central actors after this. Go. Right. So you have the different networks. All right. Stop here for me a little. You had identified the learning networks and the labor networks, but I wasn't seeing how do you connect the different kind of learning network. So you identified 4 types of learning networks, right? How do you connect them to the labor networks that exist? So for example, you had the go back to the previous slide, please. Right, so you had the vertical, you had the horizontal, here you have external and the liberal, all right? Liberal networks. Just go to the following page now. Right, so you identified 4 labor network types. What might be the relationship, the direct or indirect? What's the relationship between the labor network and learning networks? Are there particular learning networks that you might say would be more evident, for example, in a particular kind of labor network? For example, so here you have like dominant actors, but as it relates to the actual kind of learning network that is facilitated by a particular type of labor network in terms of how work is structured in the organization, because one of the things that was coming out is that in terms of the labor network, they are concerned about the work processes and also humanity. So what does the learner want to learn, understand, and so on, as well as the worker want to understand, as well as the processes in work. And for this, the labor network would speak to the kind of processes that exist. Is it hierarchical, bureaucratic, that kind of thing, more liberal? And is that kind of thing connected to or more related, right, to a kind of network? Didn't quite see that, so I just wanted to ask you about that, because even as we look at our respective workplaces, can we identify, for example, what network might be more closely aligned to what exists in our workplaces, and then can we see a pattern in terms of the kind of learning networks that might be more maybe applicable or more evident where we are, or that we might need to consider even more based on this? All right, you get the question I'm asking you? The link between the labor network and the learning network. Did you get that?
Oh, sorry, I was talking. Sorry, miss. All right. Just.
Oh, you were talking with your mic closed.
So
I just hush.
You said that you just want to find out what the link is.
Yes. So, for example, can we connect a kind? Because right here you have the 4 labor network types: entrepreneurial, machine, bureaucratic, adhocratic, and professional networks, labor networks. So I want to know what would be the direct link between these type of networks. For example, let us say someone is more in an entrepreneurial type of setting, all right? Would you find, for example, in an entrepreneurial type of setting where the kind of learning network that is used is one that is more external? Because remember the 4 network types you have around there. So how do we connect the network type? Because you're saying, right, is there a way that the network type can be connected to a learning, labor network type can be connected to a learning network type?
Are you hearing me?
Hearing you now.
All right, let me see if I can, what I'm going to say makes sense, because I think you lost me. All right. For the learning network, right? We can think of it like a software, and then the labor network is like the hardware, something that way, we can physically see. I don't know if that.
Let me see if I can just interpret what Miss is saying. So, for example, in the entrepreneurial, what would you normally find within that system? What would you find within something that is bureaucratic and rigid? What would you find? Which one of the networks would you most likely find? So she wanted to see that link, that connection between the labor networks and the kind of learning network you would find within those groups. Is that it, Miss?
Yes, thanks, Tobia. Yes, that is basically what I'm asking.
Tanisha, I'm going to try and answer that.
Yeah, go ahead, Jerome. Yes, that would be appropriate. That's fine.
All right, so let me start by giving an explanation for the learning network and the labor network. So the learning network focuses on educational training and knowledge sharing. Example, training programs and online learning platforms. A labor network, however, focuses on excuse me. A labor network, however, focuses on employment, jobs, and workforce connection. Example, job placement systems. So the connection between them, I guess, would be that learning networks prepare individuals with the competence needed for the work, right? So both of them, the learning networks, would prepare the individual with the competence needed for work. The labor network.
Yes, Jerome, they do. What I'm asking, sorry, let me see if I can help you there. I see a hand there, Tamika. What I'm asking is, how do these networks, the labor networks, well, the learning networks give you the competence of work, but within each labor network, is there a different way that they facilitate this kind of learning connection? Right? So I do get the definition that you have shared.
I think it's together they create the connection, but by the different
together
training.
They who? Together
learning
they
network,
who?
the learning network and the labor network.
Right. So yes, and I would agree with that. But what I'm saying is there are different types of labor networks, and in a similar way, different types of learning networks. Would there, for example, let us say the entrepreneurial type of labor network, would that be more associated, for example, with an external, they create learning within their context, possibly more using the external type of learning network? So I do agree with you, but I'm just asking which of the types would be more associated, right? Which type of learning network, if so, would be more associated with, let us say, specific types of labor networks. So I agree with your definition, definitely, but I'm just trying to see if we can find a closer tie in terms of being able to, possibly delineate, identify, connect, that kind of thing. All right. Jerome, still there?
Yes. Tanisha.
Yes, who is that? Who is saying that?
Sorry, let me.
Hi, Tanisha. Yes.
Oh, I think Tamika was before me. So go ahead, Tamika,
well.
and then I'll.
Okay, I am going to venture to say that for the entrepreneurial, it may be a horizontal type situation in terms of the learning network. Because if we look back at the definition of horizontal, we realize it's employee to employee. It's just regular. There is no hierarchy there. It's just everybody to everybody. We're on the same level. And in an entrepreneurial setting, that might be the dominant learning network because of the relationship between the employees at the entrepreneurial level. If we look at the dominant actors within the machine bureaucratic, where it says managers and work preparation staff, it may suggest that the vertical, the top-down approach may be that which is dominant there. And then if we go down further, we can see where we get to the liberal and the external based on the dominant actors that are found within each labor network. That is what I would use to identify which LNT would perhaps be more prominent within this specific labor network type.
Yay, Tamika. Sorry. So yeah, that's and then for the professional, I mean, it's coming from outside, so it could be both for professional doc, because I'm learning something, I'm sharing it with my colleagues, as well as, you know, it may be coming from outside, or coming from the top and trickle down. So it could be both, as it's a specific and complex.
Right. All right, so it could be both. You said both. Both which one? Because now you have four.
It's gonna come from external, and it's gonna come from the vertical, yeah, the same level. So me to my colleague. The
horizontal. That would be horizontal,
yes.
Right? Yeah, that would be horizontal. All right. Yeah, thanks for that, for adding that to it. Yes, all who have responded. And yes, Tamika, looking at the actors does help in determining which network might be more dominant in that particular labor network type. So yes, it's important to note, as you have there, who are the dominant actors, and based on who might be the dominant actors, then using that to link back to the kinds of network that one might find. And this is something as well, looking at our particular organizations, who are the dominant actors in the areas in which we work. For example, if we are in more a machine bureaucratic type organization, are we finding that we are dominated by a more vertical type learning network, even as was it Tobias shared and others, yourself as well, Tanisha, shared in terms of in the hotel industry, right? Is that the kind of thing where we are finding where it is more geared towards what managers and, let us say, the higher echelons have decided that should be learned? And if that is what we are finding, to what extent, for example, might that be impacting on the workers themselves doing additional learning that they might think that they need? All right. So when we are finding, let us say, a particular type of learning network more dominant, per se, to what extent might it be fully addressing the humanity element as against the work process element? If you find that it is of such where, for example, it is more vertical, let's say the vertical network is what is more dominant, right? To what extent is it limiting? So to expand on some of the questions that you have asked there, Tanisha, to what extent, let us say, the vertical network would, for example, limit the humanity element in terms of what the worker really wants to learn, what the worker considers that this is something that, you know, I might need to know a little bit more of. Is the person, our persons permitted still within that vertical network to also do things horizontally, to also take certain initiative and go external to find, you know, those kind of things? So the network theory has given us, you know, let us say, some distinct types, but is there a way that there can be a combination of, these various networks within, the one entity, so that, the different perspectives, the different needs are worked on, because, we might find that, especially, maybe I'm particularly, concerned about the vertical network, where a lot of times, as you have indicated there, Tanisha, in your presentation, managers decide that this is what they want, and because there is a certain culture and a certain goal, then some things are pushed. But as they are pushing that in the vertical, to what extent are the persons within the organization also given the liberty to do something from the horizontal level, or even go external? So how open are our systems to facilitate or allow the coexistence of different types of networks within the organization, to facilitate, the various types of learning that need to take place? So we get it kind of linear, where it's this one, that one, that one. But, how can they be combined to take into consideration the various factors that need to be brought to the table, where learning is concerned, especially when we are going to be taking into consideration the humanity aspect of it, what workers know they need to learn? Because a lot of times, for example, you're sending people on customer service training, and it is not customer service training they need. First of all, people need some mental reset, because you could give skills, but if people's mindset is that, listen to me, people are not to bother me for whatever, you could teach them skills from now till tomorrow, until there is more, so a kind of mental shift, maybe psychological shift, and whatever other shift, then certain things are still not going to be adapted. So there might be other things that people need to learn that are not being presented. To what extent do they feel free? What's a learning culture? And that's another topic we're going to look on coming up. What's a learning culture in the organization that facilitates, the different networks, okay, as learning is required. So just having us think a little bit more on that. Tobia.
I just wanted to add to what you're saying by giving an example. So in my organization, there's this new focus on, it's called PBIS, Positive Behavior Intervention System. And there had to be a new, of course, training for all the career development officers, instructors, all of that. And in the training, some of us from my institution realized that this is something that we had been practicing, because it was something that we recognized needed to happen. So we're saying, okay, it almost feels regurgitated, but as it went on, they started to twist what it meant, and it just muddled the whole thing, and it left persons more confused rather than clear on what to do. And I find that sometimes that's what happens when we do vertical things. They think they know what is needed. But if you just ask on the ground what has been working, then you would find what persons need to know more than the other way around.
More than the other way around, right? So thank you so very much for bringing that in. So it is, to what extent do we really bear in mind the worker, the needs of the worker, that humanity element that has been mentioned here in this LNT, theory, right? To what extent do we really bear that in mind in determining how the learning network is actually created, and the type of learning network that is used, right? And what training or learning is facilitated. And again, always remembering that it is learning is more than just training, right? It is more than just training. So there might need to be, yes, particular training courses, but what other types of learning do we facilitate, in keeping with what are the needs of the worker? That humanity, for me, that humanity element is critical, and I'm not so sure how much emphasis we do place on that humanity element, what the learner really needs, the worker really needs to learn, needs to understand what are his or her are their concerns, how much emphasis we actually do place on that, how much do we get them involved in sharing what is it they really need to know, taking certain kind of initiative and rewarding certain kinds of learning, and identifying when certain learning has taken place and the difference it is making, and so on. How do we really, really pay attention to that? Because as you shared there, Tobia, okay, people have given us from the top down, but it really doesn't connect with what we really need to know and need to understand. And as you say, muddy the waters, because the actual, it takes into consideration something else that would have come up there in terms of the contextual learning. So it's not just general information, and that would have come out in one of the things that Jerome presented in terms of one of those theories, not just the general, context, because teaching a doctor the same thing as you teach somebody else in accounting, in terms of whatever that particular thing is, it might not work the same way. So you on the ground know the ins and outs, but sometimes that is not taken into consideration. How do we pull that into the picture again, the humanity element? For me, that's critical, very critical. Go ahead, Tamika.
I think, so when I was in undergrad, I used to work at KFC. And because we were being trained, so KFC is a franchise, and it is expected that any KFC location you go in Jamaica, you are supposed to get the same experience in terms of the taste and the quality of the food. So some things come pre-packaged. The seasoning, for example, and instructions on how to do certain things, those come top down. And you just follow it and everything should be uniformed. However, KFC also, international KFC now, each country you go to, KFC has the authority, there's some sort of leeway to include something local. And KFC Jamaica chose rice and peas. So there was a prescribed way to make the rice and peas. And the training people showed us, the new people, how to make the rice and peas according to management's instructions. When they taught us how to make the rice and peas according to management, they immediately said, but don't do it like that. Because over time they had come to realize that the rice and peas was not being sold. People not buying it. It was just not, the taste was just not appealing to
Jamaica taste rice and peas at all.
So the staff now took it upon themselves to play with the recipe. I hope I'm not getting nobody in trouble. The staff took it upon themselves to play with the recipe and eventually found a way to get the rice and peas moving. So they then proceeded to show us the tweaked way to make the rice and peas. So we, of course, you have to learn what management say how you must do it. But they also took the time because of tacit knowledge, and I think that is where we lose some of the thing. Management don't think about tacit knowledge. They are the ones who are there every day, interacting with the customers, observing the things. They know more than management does. You understand? So they eventually found a way to make the thing better. And eventually the company benefited because they sold more rice and peas.
Of course. And then if everybody wants to come to Jamaica KFC, because we have done something else.
Doc, can I all right.
Yes, go ahead. Who is that?
It's Tanisha.
Thanks, Tamika. I'll come back. Yes, go, Tanisha.
I'd say based on this theory, right? And what it says with management and stuff, I realize, and as Tamika said, employees are the intimate partners with the actual customers. We you know, we are interacting day to day with the customer. So if it is that something is broken, we're normally the first to find out. So if training or something needs to change, it normally comes from us. But what I also, based on a previous place I used to work, I realized they didn't have a training culture. So what they did is at the end of the year, or you know, for some businesses they have a training budget. So when they realize that, you know, it's almost the end of the year, they just fling a training on everybody. Not necessarily a training that is needed, but the money has to be spent. So they just do a training. So customer service may not be the issue, but they're doing a customer service training. It may be the issue may have been the system. The systems are outdated. And that company we used to complain about, the customers used to complain about the system, but the company did not see it as the system. They saw it as the persons who are using it, not using it properly. But we're saying the system, every minute the system crash. So spend the money on the system and then get the system up. So I think with this training, with this module or this theory, it shows that you have to, I'd say, know what you're doing and know what your priorities are. That's why it says that we have to know what the business goals are. And we also have to know what your personal goals. Like for my organization now, we have goals that we have to set. So we have business goals that every year we get. And then we have individual goals. And then we have to figure a way how to ensure that both of them are combined, whether through training and training. Because of the business goals, the training needs filter from top down. And then for personal or individual needs or goals, it goes, you know, from me to my team member. So I find something, I train my team member, or I get training from my team member, because I'm going to collaborate with somebody else that knows something, you know, from a different department or even my department, and we collaborate that way with a cross training or something. So I guess it just depends on the organization and if they know anything about training or learning. So I will leave somebody else.
So it's a number of things both of you have raised there now, you know. We start going to all of those things there. So again, looking at, yes, both. So we're looking at the two things, the two main elements that have come out in terms of learning networks, the work processes and the human element, and the tacit knowledge would come under that human element there. That Tamika has raised, and vertical part of it coming top down, what managers say, and you know, this is what is passed down. But then horizontally, we realize that, hey, yes, we want the work processes to flow. We want the thing to be what productive. We want people to buy, because we go back to, at the end of the day, whatever we are doing as it relates to people learning and growing, it should lead to some benefit, right, for the organization. And what you want the rights to sell, you want to make more profit. And we come back to the economics again of learning, right? At the end of the day, you need to get some tangible benefit out of it, which includes economic benefits. And if you want more rice to sell, then you have to do it in the way that Jamaican people like rice and peas. All right, not just, you know, the standard, oh, you do whatever, which is bland, and those people. No, we like spice and things. So how do we do it? So there is both the vertical network in terms of the training top down, but there is also a horizontal component, even as was shared there by Tamika. So we are seeing a combination. So it is this kind of understanding, right, in our organization. That is, you know, something that we need to look at. How do we have that kind of combination that really brings out the best, right, also recognizing that, again, learning is more than the training. All right, learning is more than training. Just something there, Tanisha, as you and Jerome were presenting, sometimes, some things you might have just said, training, but always aspects of learning, of causing growth in knowledge and skills and attitudes and so on. That's going to lead to a greater product. So we have been focusing on training sometimes in terms of HRD, but how do we open up to learning, which goes beyond training, which will take into consideration, for example, some of the things that we do across, in the horizontal network, some of the things that we do as we, get involved in, for example, somebody mentioned the open education. But you could also have ways in which you are, just tacitly soaking up some things, right, based on your involvement in other activities and so on. So we need to look at that. How do we, in a structured way, right, look at these things, ensuring that learning is taking place that is actually going to lead to things improving. And as Tanisha has indicated, sometimes we are not facilitating the right kind of learning, because the thing that needs to be addressed is not what is being addressed. And again, this takes us as human resource practitioners to look at what, again, is the real goal. What is the goal? Not just what is the chief aim as it relates to, we need to have a training at the end. What should be the impact of that training? What should be the effect of that training, right? Not just a broad goal, but what's the aim? What impact? And for me, the thing of impact is important. Not just doing something, but what's the impact? And if we evaluate it, right, we analyze, and that's one of the things that would have come out in like earlier presentations, right? As we look at evaluation, as we look at reflection, was it last week that spoke about reflection? If we reflect on, for example, what's the effect, what's the impact of the learning or the training that's been facilitated in our organization, right? Are we addressing the right thing? If we need to address the right thing, what is the learning that would be related to that thing that needs to be addressed? All right. So reflection is going to be important. All right. And ensuring that we are targeting learning that is going to address the right thing, the right concern. All right. Fix the right problem to lead to the right outcome. All right. So it is not just cooking rice and peas, but how we cook it, right? What exactly goes into it in order to, yes, we can have the product on the line, but the product is staying there, it's not moving. What's gonna cause that? What's the learning that needs to take place to get to what we want? So it's a number of things that we have to think about. What's our chief aim, right? What's our definite chief aim? And what is facilitating that chief aim? What are some of the things that we need to put in place? What are some of the things that we need to address, right? What are the processes that we need to look at? What are the skills? What are the internal things? How do we connect with the people, the humanity that's going to get those processes, in the way that we want them to? So a number of things, even as we look at this theory, what are the specific networks, that we are looking at? How do we engage maybe multiple networks, right, within the context of what we are doing, right? As you evaluate your own workplace, which of these networks is being utilized? What would you say, we might need to look on a little bit more, what can be adapted, right, in order to get the kind of impact and have that kind of effect that we need. All right, so just some additional things to think about. Any other questions or comments? Time is up now, so I want to close off. Anybody else?
Not from us. Not from me, Doc.
All right.
Are we going to start on time next week or same, just so we can plan? Are you going to tell us the day?
All right. Okay. All right. Thanks. Let me just wrap this up. And we just